NFL trades and trade discussions happen all the time, whether it be for an aging player, a disgruntled player, or a player that may want a new contract, but the current team he is on is not willing to pay the premium for what the player thinks he is worth. And over the past few years, we have seen a lot of big trades, whether it was A.J. Brown to the Eagles, Deshaun Watson to the Browns, Tyreek Hill to the Dolphins, and the list goes on. And while these were all big players being traded away and ultimately franchise-altering trades, we ask the question, what would a trade involving a superstar quarterback look like? What would it look like if Patrick Mahomes was traded from the Kansas City Chiefs? Well, in today's video, we're going to break down a couple of trade possibilities involving not only Patrick Mahomes, but a few other premier quarterbacks too, like Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. And we will break down everything that would be required from both sides, and without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video by discussing what a trade would look like for Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow. And a preface for all of the quarterbacks discussed in today's video, none of these guys are on the trade block obviously, but it's the offseason and this is a fun thought process and exercise to play out, and with a player like Joe Burrow being available for today's video, there's a fair share of teams that would be eliminated right away from being a trade partner with the Bengals because they simply don't have enough assets to trade for him. And Burrow has thrown for over 4,400 yards and 34 touchdowns in each of the last two seasons, while completing at least 68% of his passes, and is one of the best quarterbacks in all of football. There's a whole debate of where he stands, and some people rank him above Josh Allen and have him at 2, while others have him at 3, and then there's the occasional fans that have fellow 2020 draftee Justin Herbert ahead of him from a sheer talent standpoint. The point here is Burrow is a 26-year-old quarterback that has led his team to back-to-back AFC Championship games and even a Super Bowl appearance in 2021, and his asking price would be astronomical. So take a team like the Minnesota Vikings, for example, who I do not believe would have enough to trade for Burrow. Cincinnati would start off by asking for both Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson at minimum, and I would imagine due to Burrow's youth, and given Kirk will be 35 years old at the start of the 2023 season, they would also ask for an additional 2 first-round picks. And this is because Cincinnati would be taking a huge risk knowing they have Burrow now for presumably the next decade, and a true wild card in Kirk Cousins, who already isn't the player Burrow is, let alone is 10 years older, technically 9, but much older to say the least. So for a team like the Vikings, I don't think they reasonably have enough to even trade for him. And the same can be said for several teams too, and if the Bengals were to trade him, it would be out of conference as they wouldn't want to have the possibility of running into Joe before the Super Bowl. Basically, they wouldn't want him to block their path of getting to the big game, and if he were to beat them in the big game, that would be more accepted and it would be something else entirely. So the criteria to trade for someone like Burrow is going to be even more than what was required for Deshaun Watson, which was 3 first-round picks, a 3rd-round pick, and a 4th-round pick. And technically Cleveland also received a 5th round too. So we're looking at a premier player along with a couple of first-round picks, but the caveat is Cincy, and this applies to everyone in today's video by the way, would somehow, someway, have to get a quarterback in return, because at the moment Trevor Siemian and Jake Browning are the only other guys on the roster, and they wouldn't want to waste Jamar Chase and T. Higgins' prime with one of those guys, and the rest of Tyler Boyd's tenure as a Bengal too for that matter. So this really limits where Joe could go, and Dallas would be an option, because I think Dallas could package both Dak Prescott and Micah Parsons, and there would be a combination of picks in here, and in terms of value, I think this would be the starting point. I don't know how many picks would be involved here, but Cincinnati would get one of the best defensive players in football, and a player that would certainly love to chase down Patrick Mahomes with the AFC Championship on the line. Having Dak would still give them a chance to compete in the AFC, and Micah would make life for, well, everyone on the defense easier. And for Dallas, having Joe Burrow throw to CeeDee Lamb would be very good for them, and put them in contention for the NFC title almost immediately. They would be improving at the quarterback position on a team that already went 12-5, and that was with Dak missing several games last year and being significantly more turnover prone than normal, as he threw 15 interceptions in 2022 alone. Next up is Josh Allen of the Bills, and a lot of the criteria involving Joe Burrow applies to Allen as well, as the Bills wouldn't want to say, hey New England, Josh is available for a trade, so here's his price, and you get the point. The big difference between Cincinnati and Buffalo, though, from a team perspective, and ultimately for the topic of today's video, is Cincinnati's team is more complete than Buffalo's, and it showed when they beat them by 17 points in last year's playoff game. So I think Buffalo would be more inclined to trade Allen for a couple of significant players from a team and try and build the trenches as well, which is where they were flat out dominated at times in 2022. Josh is also a dual threat quarterback, and you can certainly make the case he has the second highest trade value in all of football, only behind Patrick Mahomes. There's no throw Josh can't make, and for better or worse, at times, Josh is not afraid to put his body on the line for his team. And the for worse part within that is obviously risking injury, which scares the shit out of Western New York when Josh takes off and lowers his shoulder with the football in his hands. But outside of Stephon Diggs, this team's receivers are Gabe Davis, Khalil Shakir, who, to be fair, is expected to take a step this year, Trent Sherfield, and Justin Shorter. So if we take a look at a team like the Detroit Lions, for example, who have had 4 first-round picks in the past 2 years, this team certainly has the capability and the armor to get a trade done for Josh Allen. Obviously, it's going to cost a tremendous amount, but with all of the young talent they have, they can get it done. And Buffalo would immediately ask for both Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and as mentioned, we need to beef the trenches for Buffalo, and Detroit has a very good offensive line, so it would very much be a pick your poison up front. I think they would ask for Penei Sewell, as believe it or not, Penei is still just 22 years old at the time of this video release, and because there is a significant difference in Jared Goff and Josh Allen, there would be discussions of Buffalo also trying to acquire somebody like Jack Campbell, who the Lions just drafted in the first round. This part is difficult to project in terms of what the Lions would actually do in this scenario, because we saw Deshaun Watson get 3 first-round picks, and we saw the Russ trade for that matter too, which by the way involved 3 players in Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, and Noah Fant. But neither Deshaun nor Russ had the trade value Josh does now. So I don't think Detroit would be comfortable parting ways with all 3 of St. Brown, Penei Sewell, and Jack Campbell, and at this point it would be let's take Penei or Jack Campbell off the table and offer first round picks instead. And Buffalo would probably say we have the second highest asset in all of football, so this is the cost, and we're not taking anything less for Josh Allen, so basically, get your offer up. And for anyone wondering from a draft pick perspective for Allen, or even Burrow for that matter, first off, I don't think it would be entertained, because that implies this year would be a wash given they are trading their quarterback away, but I think at minimum it would start with 5 first round picks, and why wouldn't it? With Joe, we've seen him elevate an entire city over the past few years and win playoff games for Cincinnati for the first time since the 90s, and for Josh, we've also seen a city rally around him over the past few years and show him and the team unwavering support, whether it's at the airport at midnight when they arrive back after a tough game. And to really sell that to the fan base that, oh hey, we have these 5 future first round picks in exchange for a franchise player that's become an icon of a city, I don't think would happen. So I think for both Joe Burrow and Josh Allen, it would be multiple starters and picks included, and we haven't even got to Patrick Mahomes yet, which is a very unique player to discuss in a trade, and we are getting to Patrick Mahomes now. So with Patrick Mahomes and the idea of trading him, this would be a hair different than the Bills and Bengals situation, as I think they would look to trade Travis Kelce as well and go with a complete rebuild. There's also a possibility this would force the 65-year-old Andy Reid into retirement and the Chiefs would look completely different. And Patrick's accolades in his first 5 years as a starter are unlike any player we've seen enter the NFL. He's a 2-time Super Bowl champion, a 2-time Super Bowl MVP, and a 2-time regular season MVP too. He has a lifetime record of 64-16 as a starter, and if you have him on your team, you're a Super Bowl contender, presumably until he retires. He's won 14 games as a starter in 2 of the past 3 seasons, and I was listening to a podcast right after his 5,000-yard, 50-touchdown season back in 2018, and the idea was presented. What if Mahomes was on the market now? What could the Chiefs get? And this was after just 1 season of him, let alone 5, and the response was, I wouldn't accept anything less than 10 first-round picks. And because Mahomes is such a one-of-one player, the conversation would have to start with at least 5 first-round picks, which, by the way, technically gets into a territory of where you can't trade first-round picks, and there's a reason you don't see NBA-type trades in the NFL, where we'll swap a 2024 5th-round pick for a 2031 4th-round pick, because you can only trade so far down the road, but you get the point. And what would further enhance Mahomes' value in a trade, or lessen it depending on how you view it, is you would have to assume these first-round picks are at minimum 25th or later in the first round, because the earliest the Chiefs have exited in the playoffs since he became a starter back in 2018 is the AFC Championship game. 60% of the years Patrick Mahomes has started, the Chiefs have went to at least the Super Bowl, and I don't expect that to continue and for Mahomes to play in 12 Super Bowls by the time he retires, but this would certainly be brought up and certainly be a point of discussion within the trade talks with Chiefs general manager Brett Veach. And I'm sure some people have done this in Madden with the trade simulator, but I think there would be talks of offering Joe Burrow plus a first-round pick, or Josh Allen plus a first-round pick to get Mahomes. And that's not disrespect to either Burrow or Allen, as I really hope each get their rings at some point in their careers, but Patrick's 2 rings at the moment significantly outweighs each of their 0. The offers would be absolutely insane because nobody like this ever becomes available, and rightfully so, by the way. From a player-to-player trade, I honestly don't know if the Chiefs would accept something like Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs for Mahomes, and you would like to think they would, but you never know. And like we said with both the Bengals and Bills, they would have to receive either a quarterback in return, or trade several more pieces for that matter, and just completely start over, and hope they get Caleb Williams or Drake May next year. Over the past 3 years, Patrick has a record of 40-9 as a starter and has thrown 116 touchdowns to just 31 interceptions. If the Eagles wanted to offer for him, I'm sure they could with all of the talent they have on the roster, and younger talent at that, but would you give up Jalen, AJ Brown, and Hassan Reddick for Patrick Mahomes? I don't think Philly would, and that's why projecting a Mahomes trade is so difficult. Please comment what you think a Mahomes trade would look like, and I hope you enjoyed, as that's all I have for today. And if you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as only about 27% of people watching are subscribed. So if you are enjoying, please subscribe, as it helps tremendously. And until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.